Hello everybody, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. And in this video I'm going to be talking about Awakening and everything you need to know about Awakening. Okay, so Awakening is one of the best additional ways in the game to increase gear score, hence being like the best way, like get better gear. But yeah, you might hit a point in the game where you obtain I wouldn't say the most best gear in the game, but nearly the best gear that's affordable to you in the game and what's so not. And then you might be looking for other ways to increase gear score. Awakening and Infusion are some of the best ways to increase gear score. In fact, Awakening is literally like a fusion for monsters. There are some differentiations in this, and it's different, but it works in a similar process and prospect. So let me go over how it is different overall, because if you don't understand it, it can really be mind-throbbing, even if you know how Infusion works. Okay, so we got some 5 pots and 4 pots right here. Just like Infusion count, these are Awakening counts, and they don't work with each other. So if you try to get a 5 pot into a 4 pot or a 4 pot into a 5 pot, it will not work at all. You are not allowed to awaken different Awakening counts into each other. So 5 and 4s cannot awaken to each other whatsoever under any circumstance in this game. Nada. Even Awakening Ninus do not work with each other. I mean, not with each other, but Awakening Ninus, since they're 4 pots, they do not work with 5 pots either. Under any circumstance, you are not allowed to use different Infusion count monsters into each other, or different Awakening count monsters into each other. My bad. Okay. So how Awakening works is just similar to Infusion and how you start it up. We got the equip that can be used as materials. It's the same rarity, same or higher cost, same hidden potential count cap of the base monster. Unlike Infusion though, you don't have a similar. The only way you can actually awaken when it comes to monsters is it has to have the same awakening count, obviously, but they have to be the same cost or higher. If they're not the same cost or higher, you cannot awaken at all different monsters into each other. There is no similar process. There's the exact same equipped where you can use the exact same monster into each other, and then there's just, it has to have a higher or the exact same cost, and it has to have the same awakening count. If those are not those are the pretty much requirements in Awakening. If those are not met, you cannot awaken the monster whatsoever into each other. If you try out the same one though, it pretty much just costs 0 awakening orbs. That's really the only difference between using a random one and then using the exact same monster. Is it will literally cost 0 orbs. And with that being said, when it comes to the 5 stars, usually you don't want to worry about the 5 stars unless it's a new event and it gives good gear score for you. Other than that, I wouldn't really worry about it, because when it comes to the 5 stars, you're either dealing with the ordeal monsters, which they're both the attacks and the stats they offer are completely out of date, so I wouldn't want to waste orbs on those whatsoever, and I highly recommend not to waste orbs on those. And then you got your event monsters. Again, event monsters can be useful, but the only way to awaken event monsters is using the exact same monster into each other, and it can be quite a grind because the infusion material is specifically for the event. The monster could be hard to obtain and what's so not, so you really want to skill it out and you really want to think about it before you go for event monsters, because usually when it comes to these gem spawn monsters, they give around the exact same stats as the event monsters, except when it comes to the gem spawn monsters, they have better attacks and they're usually better for more circumstantial things than the event monsters themselves. Okay, so now that I've really talked about that, let's talk about how it increases gear score, because it might be confusing. If you actually look at my area, yes, when you awaken, right, each time you awaken it does increase the level cap, but let me show you how much it increases it by, because unlike Infusion, it doesn't work the same way to how it increases gear score. As you can see right here, we go from 87 to 89, and look at the stat difference. It's literally throwing 2 tapsies on. 2 tapsies for attack and 2 tapsies for defense, or 2 tapsies for slot 1 and 2 tapsies for slot 2. It literally is a 10 stat increase if I'm reading this correct. Or if it's not a 10 stat increase, a solid 10, a 10, in your gear score. When you're looking at your gear score, a solid 10 out of whatever number that is, 100 something K or what, so not, a literally solid 10. Let me tell you, that is not a lot. You can get that literally with 2 tapsies. So as you can see right here, It does raise the level cap, right? But you're not getting like almost nearly any gear score off of raising the level cap when it comes to Awakening. So how are you getting gear score? Why is Awakening so important if you're not getting much gear score from it? You actually do get gear score from it. It just works differently. Okay, so when you're looking at your monster, in the right next to the skill, they have the hidden potential. And the hidden potential, they have 3.5 different types of ways, or 3.5 different types of beneficial effects each time you awaken. First one is the increased stats and slots. Depending on the monster you grab, it could be super beneficial and super not. Okay, so when you get like the slot slot increase, it doesn't go to your monster, it goes straight to your character. So there's no side effects, there's no plus values, there's no percentages, there's none of that stuff. It just goes straight to your character right away, no questions asked. You get a solid, if you were awakened this area right now, right, if I didn't have this already awakened at 1, it'd be a solid 5k for what is it, slot 1 is attack, solid 5k to attack, no questions asked, just given to you right as soon as you awaken the monster first time. So there's no like and ifs or buts about it. It goes straight to your character. It's not on the monster, so you don't get boost or anything from it. Just straight off the bat, just straight up solid stats. That's how you're getting your gear score from Awakening, is they offer it in the hidden potential. As you unlock hidden potentials, they give you increased stats in these slots, whether it's 1 or 2. Another thing that they offer as you awaken is additional Unison effects. Now these are more on like the 31s, 30s, and 32 cost monsters, which is really nice, but they offer them sometimes in the newer monsters too. Like if you see right here, they offer a little bit right here. It recovers 30 cost for all allies. As you can see right here, it does the same thing too. The increased stats in selected slots. 8k this one is though, so it's a lot more better. It's 8k, no questions asked. All these monsters, when they increase the selected stats, is straight up no questions asked. So as you can see right here, some of these have additional Unison effects, some of them might not. For example, let's go to Keyroid. Keyroid doesn't have any additional Unison effects, neither would Aquarius if I were to find my Aquarius. Okay, so none of them have that. So some of these monsters will have additional Unison effects, which could be better like for your Unison monsters, so it can increase what it does and just have an overall better performance. So that's also good as well. Okay, so the next method, or the next thing they give away, is the okay, it's right here. They give away defense and they give away resistance. Resistance can be helpful depending on the situation. For the most part, it's usually not like helpful whatsoever, but very, very, very occasional can be helpful. So it's not really like a good thing from the Awakening pots to obtain, but it is there, and maybe sometimes it might help eventually. Pretty much what it does, it like decreases the success value of like this one's curse resistance, right? So it decreases. Of course, it like a monster could also have like increase the success value by like decreasing like elemental status, status alignment resistance. So it could just get rid of this resistance right away. But let's say a monster casts curse resistance at a success value of 90. Since you have cure resistance for like 30 plus, I'm not gonna say by like exact math, but it's going to lower, I believe. Since it's 90, it's going to lower to 60. If not, then it just gets lowered in general. So that's how pretty much how these resistances work, as they lower the success value. Even if it's 100, the success value of like, let's say you were trying to get cursed is 100. Because you have curse resistance, it gets lowered. It's not 100 anymore, and it has a chance to not curse at all, to be fairly honest. So that's how that works. Again, usually you won't have to deal with that type of stuff, so it is occasional. Maybe for confusion and paralysis, this is super helpful, depending if you could stack these or not, and like whatsoever, and etc, etc. But for the most part, these are not something you really want to worry about when it comes to Awakening, and just to be fairly honest, it's just something on the side. To be fairly honest, it's not really too much of a good or beneficial effect. But then we have like the elemental defense from Unison damage, and you're reading this right when it says 150 plus. Usually it looks like, I think if I'm reading these right, all these give like 100 and something plus. And yes, when it comes to taking Unison damage, player versus player, your elemental defense will play a part in the damage reduction. So like say if I were to hit you with Romeo, right? Romeo does light damage, so the higher my light defense is, the less damage I would be taking from Romeo. Elemental defense does play a part in Unison damage. Player versus player, yes, like the only place you could get hit by Unisons is player versus player, whether it's guild battles or coliseums. So yes, elemental defense does play a part in the Unison attack and how much damage gets decreased. Save for elemental attack, it plays a part in the Unison attack and how much more damage you do. So you are reading this right when you're reading the light, whatever defense it is, whatever elemental defense it is, to be fairly honest. So it does increase it by a solid 120. So imagine you were getting hit, right? Since my light defense is 26 and I have Romeo Awaken, it gets increased just for the the Unison attack by 120. So just only because it's a Unison attack, right? A monster that's doing Unison damage. Think of it like getting 26 plus 120, because I don't have the last one unlocked, so it's going to be 120. That's literally what it is. Like, you're not reading it wrong whatsoever. Just for Unisons, your elemental defense gets increased by that exact amount. So this can be, it's like a yes no type deal. To be honest, it's usually less useless the more useful, but depending on the situation, like if you plan this right and what's so not, it can be useful, to be fairly honest. Again, it will help out in the long run eventually, but it's flip-sided because you're going to be dealing with people. They're going to have random usage. You may not be preparated for the damage whatsoever, but if they do manage to have the Unisons, it will reduce the damage and you have a chance to survive. If you are a tanky class, it's going to help, but for the most part, if you're not a tanky class, I don't know if it's really going to help much or not. So it's a yes-no type thing, to be fairly honest. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Awakening and how it works. I hope this helped out, and this is the Azrath. I'll see you in the next video. Show them what you're made of with your fully awakened monsters and your new obtained tier of gear score. And I'll catch you in the next video. I'm out. Peace.